It's an urgent manhunt for an alleged killer. It's unclear what state she's in, what name she's using, and what disguise she may have on. It has been a month since a Florida dad was found brutally murdered in a shallow grave. 5 people allegedly involved in the cover-up are now behind bars. But according to police, the woman they believe actually killed him is still on the run, evading law enforcement through manipulation tactics and a handful of alleged disguises.
She, I believe, based off of her story, is again manipulating or providing the story that she's been victimized and she's essentially on the run from a domestic violence incident.
We are joined by a member of the sheriff's office at the center of this search, giving us every new detail as the manhunt continues across state lines. We're on the case presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. We have a lot to get to in this story. I'm sure you've seen the headlines, and it is the type of situation that no one wants to be in, especially in your community, where you have an alleged killer on the loose and no one seems to know where she is and where she's been for weeks. Now, the victim in this story is a dad, and frankly, his death is chilling. Now, if there's any good news, to this point, it's that 5 alleged accomplices to this crime are now behind bars. But the alleged killer, we still don't know where she is. She may be in Florida, she could be in Georgia, maybe Alabama, and she may be using disguises and different names to get by. Now, during a manhunt of this magnitude, it's hard to feel 100% safe knowing that an alleged murderer could be in your neighborhood. It sounds dramatic, but it's true. Are they hiding out? Are they wearing a disguise? Are they asking for a ride on the side of the road? Nobody knows. Now, this story is out of Walton County, Florida, and a member of that sheriff's office is going to be here in a moment to talk about the latest in this case. But before I bring him in, I want to fill in some of the gaps and how we got here. You have probably seen this story in the headlines. It's become national news in the past week or so. But I want to get into all the details that we have. We have the court records in this case. We have a lot of different details maybe you haven't heard of to this point, and I want to break them down for you. So to start this story, we're going to go back to May 24th of this year. And that's when the Niceville Police Department in Florida receives a missing persons report for 43-year-old Jason Coulthart. Now, at the time, he was last seen leaving the college condominiums on East College Boulevard located in Niceville, Florida. Then you fast forward a month later, June 25th. Officers interview a witness who was already in custody at the Okaloosa County Jail in Florida in exchange for a negotiated plea. And this witness, unnamed in the affidavit from the Walton County Sheriff's Office, identifies themselves as the boyfriend of 38-year-old Isabelle Rose Johnson. And that name is at the center of this manhunt. Now, this witness allegedly tells police, I'm going to read for you here, quote, while in Georgia, on or around June 2nd, 2026, Isabelle Rose Johnson received a call from her roommate, Bobby Wagstaff, who was located in Freeport, Florida. Wagstaff called to tell Isabelle Rose Johnson that the dog had dug up the deceased body, which we later learned is the body of Jason Coulthart. And she needed to return to clean it up. Isabelle Rose Johnson had her friend Brian come pick her up and drove her back to her residence located off of Sunset Lane in Freeport, Florida. Brian drove her home and back to Georgia in his white F-150 pickup. So based on this report in the affidavit, it's presumed that Jason Coulthart was killed sometime between when he was last seen on May 24th and then on June 2nd, when the call from Johnson's roommate was made about the state of Coulthart's body, allegedly. Now, here's what the affidavit states happened when Johnson returned back to her boyfriend's residence in Georgia. Quote, when Isabelle Rose Johnson returned to join her boyfriend, who had remained in Georgia, she carried with her a laundry basket of very smelly clothes. The boyfriend observed a pair of blue jeans and a pair of black nylon panties. The boyfriend advised that Isabelle Rose Johnson told him she killed the victim by placing a zip tie around his neck. She then buried him in the yard and may have covered that area with a black Cadillac sedan. Isabelle Rose Johnson told her boyfriend upon her return that she covered the body with cement so that the dog would not dig it up again. The boyfriend advised the grave may be by the septic tank. As Isabelle Rose Johnson told him, she fixed the septic tank. I mean, that is horrific. Just listening to how Johnson allegedly describes Coulthart's murder It is brutal on its own. You think of this burial, cement on top, she says. Now, it's apparent that she is allegedly going to great lengths to try and keep all of this a secret. And that leads us to another set of important questions in this story. Where did this murder actually take place? And what was Johnson's alleged motive to kill a 43-year-old dad? So here's what her boyfriend tells police in the affidavit. Quote, the boyfriend continued and told the detective that Isabelle Rose Johnson killed the victim in the trailer portion of the residence, as the residence is partially a trailer and partially stick-built. Isabelle Rose Johnson told her boyfriend that she killed the victim because he was coercing her to perform criminal acts for him, and that the victim was abusive because he wanted more from the relationship than she wanted to give. That same affidavit also includes a witness statement from a man named James W. Teal, who's another alleged roommate of Johnson, who was interviewed the same day on June 25th. And at first, he was hesitant to speak with law enforcement in fear of retaliation. But get this line in the affidavit. According to the document, he tells police that he had a terminal cancer diagnosis and said, quote, F it, I am going to die soon anyway. Wow. Now, in that interview, Teal allegedly says that Johnson advised him about the murder of a man named Jersey and that she killed him by placing a zip tie around his neck. He also shared details Johnson allegedly told him about what actually happened. Quote, Teal advised investigator Gunn that he was aware of Isabelle getting rid of a boy because he was, quote, aggravating and irritating her. Teal further stated to investigator Gunn that the boy was also threatening to interfere with Isabelle's custody of her children. Teal stated to investigator Gunn that he did not believe Bobby Wagstaff had any knowledge of why she was digging the hole, but that Bobby assisted Isabelle with digging the hole. Now, we need to add something here. You heard the name Bobby a couple times. So Johnson's other roommate, her name is Bobby Wagstaff. She was charged with accessory after the fact. That is a second-degree felony for allegedly helping Johnson dig the hole where Coulthart's body was allegedly concealed. And we'll get to more on the alleged accomplices in this case, and there are several of them at this point, and we were told by law enforcement there could be more. But at this point, detectives have some pretty shocking details to go off of. And the same day, June 25th, they make their way to the residence off Sunset Lane in Freeport, shared by Johnson, Wagstaff, and Teal, to try and find evidence of human remains. Now, according to police, here is what they discover on the property. Quote, during the search of the residence and ground, a body of a deceased subject was located in a grave. That grave was covered with concrete that appeared to be partially fresh concrete, and it had a black Cadillac parked over it. The grave site was directly adjacent to the storage shed. While removing the concrete, there was live grass found under the concrete. The body had a large white zip tie around the neck. Within the residence, similar-looking zip ties were found, along with a pair of blue jeans with what appeared to be blood on them, credit cards with the name Jason Coulthart, and approximately 6.2 grams of substance that was field tested positive for methamphetamine. According to the affidavit, Johnson's roommate, Bobby Wagstaff, was home at the time the search warrant was carried out, and she admitted to police that she knew both Johnson and the victim, Jason Coulthart, and she also agreed that Johnson returned to the residence from Georgia around June 2nd, but claims it wasn't to help rebury Coulthart's body, but instead to help fix a roof leak. Now remember, law enforcement say they have text messages between the two. Keep that in mind as you hear this story. Wagstaff also allegedly admitted to police Johnson did dig a hole in the backyard, but claims it was to deepen a fire pit feet away from the grave, and she didn't allegedly help her with any digging, though Wagstaff did confess to law enforcement that she used meth within the residence. So, as we had mentioned previously, Bobby Wagstaff was arrested as an alleged accomplice in this case, specifically with the capital felony accessory charge, along with possession of a controlled substance. She is due back in court for a plea hearing on August 18th. But I want you to keep in mind, there are 4 other accomplices involved in this story, more specifically 2 different couples. So, according to a separate Walton County Sheriff's Office affidavit, there was a warrant for Isabelle Johnson's arrest that was signed the following day on June 26th. So you can see that this has been going on for weeks at this point. So police look to see who she could have had contact with within the time period connected to this case. They learned that Martin and Sandra Leverton provided Johnson a ride that same day, June 26th, to their residence in Fort Walton Beach, Florida. Police went to the couple's residence. They conducted a search warrant, but Johnson was nowhere to be found. Then you fast forward to July 1st, and they visit a residence in Santa Rosa Beach, Florida. This is all kind of in the same area up on the Panhandle. After they receive a tip about Johnson's whereabouts, that home was owned by a man named Michael White and a woman named Kathleen Morris. Those residents admitted to police that Johnson had been there along with Martin Leverton. And that's when police start connecting the dots here, asking Martin and Sandra Leverton to come into the police station for an interview. According to the affidavit, Martin Leverton admitted to providing rides for Johnson multiple times before and after police visited their home, including on June 7th and June 8th, when Johnson was arrested and released in Georgia, and that was on an unrelated charge. On June 25th, when the couple brought Johnson to their residence, on June 26th, when they visited the home of Michael White and Kathleen Morris to borrow money, and that same day to the Legacy on the Bay Apartments in Destin, Florida. According to the affidavit, Martin Leverton found out about Johnson's alleged murder of Jason Coulthart through his wife, and then he takes steps to contact his friend to arrange a safe place for Johnson to stay outside of Florida. But according to police, when they tried to leave the apartment complex, they saw a marked patrol car, and Johnson proceeded to hide her 2 backpacks in the bushes and flee across the highway. Martin Leverton then admitted he returned Johnson's backpacks to her after learning she ended up at the residence of Michael White and Kathleen Morris, along with driving her to a location near a county highway, which is later learned to be a property that was owned by Michael White. So now, in Sandra Leverton's interview with police, she admitted she bonded Johnson out of jail in Georgia around the time they allegedly went to pick up her at her aunt's house upon her request. This again was around June 7th or June 8th. Sandra said they returned Johnson to her residence off Sunset Lane in Freeport, where Coulthart's remains were found. So then we fast forward now to June 25th. And Sandra reportedly corroborated that she picked Johnson up at her residence and brought her to the couple's home with arrangements to stay at another location a few days later. The apartment complex mentioned by Martin. And at this point, Sandra allegedly was aware about Johnson's murder of Coulthart. Sandra admitted to police that when they visited the residence and asked where Johnson was, she lied and said she didn't know. After police left, Sandra said she went to the apartment complex Johnson was staying at to let her know police were looking for her. Afterwards, Sandra said that her husband, and Johnson continued to plan her escape. Sandra said they even gave Johnson a phone to use to keep in contact with them. Eventually, Johnson allegedly found her way to the residence of Michael White and Kathleen Morris on June 27th by taking an Uber from a tattoo shop, and from there, Sandra claims she was taken to another property likely owned by Michael White. Now, another interesting detail that came from the affidavit were messages from Sandra's phone that were recovered by police. Quote, there's a message from May 2026 where Harley, one of Isabelle Johnson's nicknames, sends screenshots of messages between her and Jersey, which is the name for the victim in this story, Jason Coulthart, to Sandra. Now, due to the content of the messages, Sandra tells Johnson he will see the monster and mentions using an item like what was used in the murder. Sandra advised that this was a joke, and Johnson would tell her she would stop before going too far. So you hear that, it does beg the question, just how much did Sandra Leverton know before this murder was allegedly carried out? Now, regardless, police say they had enough probable cause to arrest both Sandra and Martin Leverton on a second-degree felony charge of accessory after the fact. Both Sandra and Martin are due back in court on August 18th for a plea hearing. Now, for the final two, at least at this point as we're recording it, accomplices allegedly that we know about, you have Michael White and Kathleen Morris. And as mentioned, They also played a role, according to police, in Johnson's evasion of law enforcement. According to a separate affidavit, police went to the couple's residence on June 30th after learning Johnson took an Uber there from a tattoo shop. Michael White allegedly told police he didn't know Johnson, nor had she been at the residence. Kathleen Morris also told police she didn't know Johnson, but when the officer attempted to show Morris a photo of Johnson, she refused to look at it and walked away. Now, regardless, police said they searched the home and could not locate Johnson. On July 1st, police returned to the residence for a second interview, and both White and Morris decided to allegedly become more truthful. They purportedly admitted to law enforcement Johnson had been to their residence with Martin Leverton on June 25th, along with Johnson also being at the residence on June 26th and June 27th. Morris told police that, quote, phone calls were made, and she was told by White to get Johnson off the property, so she allegedly drove Johnson to a property owned by White roughly 11 miles away off the North County Highway 395 and gave her the keys. Now, according to Morris, the property had water, air conditioning, and a stocked fridge. Everything that she would need to take shelter, right? Well, Morris told police that she returned the following day, June 29th, to check on her and tell her that she needed to leave the property. Johnson allegedly told Morris she was working on it. So the following day, June 30th, Morris returns to this property and Johnson appears to be gone, along with her 2 backpacks. In Morris and White's case, digital evidence also came up in their police interview. Now, here's what they found when searching Morris's phone, which included text exchanges between the 2 couples. So let's start with June 27th. So you have Kathleen Morris, and this is to Martin Leverton. Quote, why is Harley, that's one of Johnson's aliases, on our couch? June 27th from Kathleen Morris to Martin Leverton. More importantly, when are you coming to get her? She goes on to say, quote, WTF is going on, Michael? Why did Marty leave his young female friend here? And when is he coming back to get her? Then Martin Leverton to Kathleen Morris, quote, I'm headed there now. And then from Kathleen Morris to Martin Leverton, we talked. Anything I can do to help, I will. Don't forget the backpacks, please. And we have talked about those backpacks and how important a piece of evidence they may be. Now, this is still on June 27th from Martin Leverton to Kathleen Morris. Quote, sorry, I'll explain soon. Kay, we can talk for chat very soon. Yep, the stuff handled. Then Kathleen Morris to Martin Leverton again. This is at 11:42 in the morning. Bring me something, please, which police later learned, they allege, was meth. Now we're at 5:34 p.m. You're a expletive for not leaving anything, LOL, need to ask about stage 4 friend. So it continues on June 27th, Martin Leverton to Kathleen Morris. Quote, my Georgia buddy can't help us out this time, which police learned was Martin's brother. Then Kathleen Morris to Martin Leverton again. Okay, 1 min, June 27th. Martin Leverton to Kathleen Morris. Okay, I need to come get Marty. Then Kathleen Morris to Martin Leverton again. Have you talked to Harley? June 28th, from Martin Leverton to Kathleen Morris, no. Next day, June 29th, Kathleen says, will you give me a call, please? Then the day after that, Michael White to Kathleen Morris, give me a call before you head back. I have some expletive to talk about to let you know what I told the law officers that come to the house. And you can see just in the alleged cover-up how damning these text messages are going to be for these alleged accomplices. Kathleen Morris to Michael White. What I said to those cops is the honest to God truth. I have no friends and I have no family, and that's beyond depressing. It's pathetic. You telling them that I do nothing reinforces that. LOL. Time for it to be over, don't you think? So based on Michael White and Kathleen Morris's alleged involvement, they were both charged with second-degree felony accessory after the fact, and they are both due in court for a plea hearing on August 18th. So now, according to police records, the last known sighting of Isabelle Johnson, at least from her alleged accomplices, was June 29th when she left the property of Michael White. But from the details we already know, there are several residences associated with her in Florida, and along with at least one in Georgia where her alleged boyfriend lived. The Walton County Sheriff's Office says she is also someone with ties to several areas in lower Alabama and northern Alabama. And there's good reason that she has reportedly gone undetected, including the fact that she allegedly goes under several different names, including Harley, as you saw in the text messages. Other names include Jessica Elaine Bowman, Jessica Elaine Thrush, Jessica Elaine Thrash, Jessica Dowdy, and possibly Denise. The Walton County Sheriff's Office also says that she has been known to be a, quote, master manipulator by moving around a lot and often getting people to help her by playing on their sympathy. The Sheriff's Office said that Johnson may tell stories about going through tough situations like domestic violence or personal hardships to convince people to give her rides, money, or other kinds of help. The Sheriff's Office says that Johnson is also known to use multiple disguises like hats and glasses, with police believing that she could have gone as far as cutting or dyeing her hair to alter her appearance. But there are some identifying factors that law enforcement have caught on to. She is described as being 5'3", weighing 120 pounds, and she is believed to have, and this is big, a rose flower tattoo on her left hand, beginning below the thumb and extending toward her index finger. She also appears to have a tattoo on her right ankle with an unknown design, as well as a large scorpion tattoo extending from her left buttock down her left thigh. The Walton County Sheriff's Office also released the last known video of Johnson from a business in Destin, Florida, just days after the discovery of Jason Coulthart's remains at the end of June, though they believe that her appearance could have been altered since then. Also, let's talk about the reward, because right now there is a total reward of up to $16,000 available for information leading to Johnson's arrest. Emerald Coast Crime Stoppers and the Florida Sheriff's Association Criminal Apprehension Assistance Program are offering $11,000, and then you have the U.S. Marshals Task Force offering an additional $5,000 under its own reward guidelines for that total of $16,000. The Walton County Sheriff's Office says that anyone with information on Isabelle Rose Johnson and where she may be, contact them at 850-892-8111, or you can remain anonymous by contacting Emerald Coast Crime Stoppers at 850-863-TIPS. Submit a tip at emeraldcoastcrimestoppers.com or use the P3 Tips mobile app. And we'll talk here to a member of law enforcement in a moment, but I can tell you, they say if you were to come across Isabelle Rose Johnson, call 911. Join us now to talk more about this manhunt, Chief Deputy with the Walton County Sheriff's Office in Florida, Dustin Cosin. Thank you, sir, for taking the time to be with us here on Law and Crime. Just as we're recording this on Friday, what's the latest on this search?
Well, the search is continuing to expand. Again, we've extended that search over Georgia, Alabama, and of course locally here in Florida. We did put out a little bit updated video. There was some pictures, some video with some updated tattoo information for Isabelle Johnson, making sure that the community and the public as a whole, anybody that could have potentially seen her, has some more details to identify her and help her bring her back to Walton County.
And as you know, people have been watching this story kind of unfold over the last couple of weeks. I know you've used the term, your department, as her just being a master manipulator. We see the disguises, we hear about the aliases she has, but in terms of, I just think of the people who allegedly helped her flee after she committed this allegedly a terrible, terrible murder. How, I guess, would you characterize the manipulation that she appears to have on people?
So I think some of the manipulation part is due to the crowds that she runs in. There's drug usage involved. There's other criminal activity that's involved. And so there's many circles. And so part of that manipulation involves having so many people that she can gain access to, or that can provide some sort of support to her. And then what we've seen from early on in the investigation, the end of June, where she was able to talk a clerk at a tattoo parlor into ordering an Uber for her, paying for it. And it was this concocted story that she was a victim of domestic violence right then and there. Again, that's not saying that she never has been, but then and there for sure was not. Again, we have been right on our heels during that video, so to speak. And so from here on, we know that there's been some other information from some interviews and witnesses where there's little bits and pieces of lies that she's using to continue to do what she's doing.
Because I think if she's been able to make it into Georgia or Alabama at this, wherever she may be, I mean, what is your advice to someone where, in the example of the tattoo parlor, here's a story where, again, like, I don't know if she's ever been a victim of domestic violence, but
Sure.
certainly a very sympathetic story to tell someone. Not just, and we'll talk about the description and the potential disguises here in a moment, but just in the way that she acts. What would be your advice to people in that area where you may believe, as this search is kind of expanded,
Yeah.
of what should be a red flag when communicating with someone who may look like her?
Well, the biggest thing for us is just knowledge. So we're providing this information to the community and the public at large, mainly so that way they have an idea of somebody could be asking you to do this. We're always very appreciative of the public helping, especially helping people in need and providing charitable contributions, those things. But we also want you to be aware. This is being used as an avenue for her to evade law enforcement and telling stories that, again, she's been victimized or that she just needs a ride or can I borrow your phone, little things like that. Again, harmless at face value, but for us, when we're trying to bring somebody back to justice that has been has an active warrant for murder, it's continuing her ability to evade law enforcement and potentially could wind them up in the Walton County Jail. We are actively in active pursuit, I guess, of additional individuals that have been helping her and providing any aid or support to her. So that's part of our entire investigation. We know that she's not the lone actor in the act itself, but it's mainly now we're shifting to that anybody that's been helping her or is willing to help her, we're going to make sure we do everything we can to hold them accountable as well.
Because allegedly right now, 5 people helped her escape. You're anticipating more arrests in this case?
Absolutely. I'll say this just kind of as a side note. We have those 5 people that have been charged with, obstruction of justice or accessory after fact. But aside from that, during our efforts to locate her, we've made an additional 15 to 20 arrests, not directly related to, but as a targeted measure to make sure that people know if you're going to, you need to be prepared. Again, that's arrest for warrants, that's arrest for drug possession, for paraphernalia, directly related to the enforcement around trying to find her. And so we're taking a very proactive and have been taking a proactive approach to capture and deal with anybody that has any dealings with her, because we know that somebody knows something, and that's where our efforts are being focused.
Because I noticed she has an extensive criminal history prior to drug charges in her past. What do people need to know about her familiarity with law enforcement up until this point?
I think that plays to her ability to continue to, well, let me back up. Some of it is her pattern of life. She doesn't have a 9 to 5 job. To what we know, she's not really ever had a 9 to 5 job. She doesn't have a home. She doesn't have a consistent place where she's been. So she bounces around from place to place with people that she knows or that she's known in the past and has associates with. And so you overlay these circles, there's connections with all those people as well. And so that's what really, too, for us makes it challenging. Our list of people of interest has grown every single day because we do more interviews and it's, oh, have you talked to so-and-so? They may know something. And so as that list continues to expand, there's a likelihood that somebody else is going to be involved. And so we're continuing to, again, put forth the effort there and getting every little piece of the puzzle and every little bit of piece of evidence, not just for the homicide investigation, but investigation as to where she is.
What are some of the disguises that she appears to be using?
Well, if you can tell from the video, the initial video there from the tattoo shop, had her hair kind of cut low or not shaved, but definitely cut lower on one side and put on a ball cap. If you look at the video, her demeanor and her attitude, she, I believe, based off of her story, is, again, manipulating or providing the story that she's been victimized and she's essentially on the run from a domestic violence incident. And so anything to do with changing her appearance, wearing a hat. We believe that she may have cut her hair shorter and or dyed her hair. So that's a potential. And that could be dyed lighter and darker because we've heard both stories. So we have to pay attention to each little bit of potential appearance disguise. And if you look just genuinely at the pictures that we released, she looks different every single one. That's mug shots to some of the social media posts that we put out, but also some of the video, screenshots from video. She looks different in either one. So I really want the public to pay attention to some specific things that she's done or even just her demeanor or how she speaks.
And with how she speaks, I mean, she's her name is Isabelle Rose Johnson. She has several aliases,
Correct.
Harley being one of them. And people can look up and see like what specifically those aliases are, but like, how did she accumulate so many different names to where those may carry weight and people may know her as something other than her given name?
Yeah, to be very blunt, very candid, just that's the lifestyle. That's how she's lived. That she's bounced around. So bouncing around with different names, being able to commit criminal acts with different name, and then use those as an alias to pass off as being someone else. For the first probably week of the investigation, we were calling her by her name, Isabelle Johnson, and then people started to say, "You talking about Harley?" And so we had to shift our efforts to call her Harley instead of calling her Isabelle Johnson. So that was one of the first shifts of making sure we're calling her what people know her as. And then you add the Jessica Bowman, Jessica Dowdy, additional names that she's been arrested or are listed as an alias. And even we found some, I believe, some paperwork that has some of those names of official paperwork where she's used that for, again, paperwork documentation purposes. So really, I'm going to say it like this, all bets are off of what she could be doing. Our focus is on making sure that we follow the facts and the evidence to find her, all working towards that successful prosecution of the criminal case for the homicide.
How is she able to get so many people to this point to put their freedom at risk to help her, according to law enforcement, to be able to evade this murder charge?
Broadly, the consensus from all of the interviews, but also some of the individuals that we've dealt with, when you're involved in narcotics usage, when you're involved in criminal activity, there's so many avenues, again, relationships, romantic, sexual nature, you name it, that you can get somebody to do something that you want them to do. And that's unfortunate for us. We have rules we have to play by. She doesn't. So she's able to use legal means to continue to evade us. And as each person ultimately helps her or provides her any support, then we're going to be there to find them and continue our investigation and move through those people and processes individually at a time.
And the two other states other than Florida where it's believed that she may be at this point, and again, I mean that may expand, beyond that area, but Georgia and Alabama, beyond being driving distance from Walton County, what ties does she have to those states that make them of interest to you guys?
Yeah, so North Alabama, I believe, was a previous residence. Lived in, I believe, Huntsville area for a while. We've been working with everywhere that she has a connection to that we can show on paper, whether it be a previous arrest or some documents that we've recovered. We've been working with those local law enforcement jurisdictions to check addresses of family members, to check addresses that she's been known to frequent. Going to the Georgia area, she was arrested in early June. We believe in the time frame of possibly when the homicide occurred and was arrested there in Georgia. And so, right after we discovered that and had her identified as the primary suspect, we sent investigators up there to interview some people that she associated with there. So, really, it's a bunch of connections based off of what we know about her. And that list is long. And so it adds some complications to it, but there's no question that every little bit of piece of information that we get, whether it be from a tip or something factual that we have, we're going to follow up on and use it to how we can.
And your agency has been very vocal on social media, sharing images, sharing new videos, pieces of information that's come out, but almost in some ways speaking directly to her, knowing that potentially she is reading those posts. I mean, if she's watching this right now, what is your message to Isabelle Johnson?
Simply put, we're gonna find you. There's no question about it. Our investigative division has been working nonstop on this, and so we're gonna find you. That warrant for an open count of murder is not going to go away. And what we are going to continue to do is to continue to put people in jail that are helping you. And ultimately, we'll see you back in Walton County if you're out of Walton County, but we'll see you for sure at Walton County Jail at some point. And that's not being arrogant. That's not being cocky. That's just simply stating that we are going to get you.
And if somebody notices her tattoo, if someone is in that moment, wherever they may be, and they've seen these stories and they realize that they're potentially talking to Isabelle Rose Johnson, what should someone do if they see her or come in contact with her?
The easiest thing is call 911 or call the local law enforcement. If you see her, don't hesitate to call her. If you see somebody that you think is her, call the local authorities. So we have reached out to probably 10, 15, 20 just proactively. That's not counting the tips that we've gotten outside of our area. So reaching out to those agencies and providing them with not only the information we've released publicly, but also some information that we have investigative in nature that to give to arm them of, hey, she could be in this area. Will you keep an eye out? Will you reach out to people that she's associated with? And so if you do see her, call 911. There is that reward for up to $16,000 for any information leading to her capture and arrest. So that could be a small portion of the reward or a small portion of the information that could ultimately lead to her arrest and bringing her back to Walton County.
And just as this has become, I think over the last week, it feels like more of a national news story. I mean, how many tips have you been receiving about people who have potentially seen Isabelle Johnson?
Minimum 4 to 5 every day just outside of our local area. So that first week after everything, when we really started focusing outside of the investigation, because an investigation, especially in a homicide, especially when there is a body that's been recovered in a shallow grave, is not just a day thing. That is a long-term investigation, and long-term starts up on the front end with a week worth of re-interviewing and documentation of evidence. And so when we shifted to our efforts need to be really focused and directed at finding her. We were pulling in 3-4 tips an hour, especially with some contacts that we were making out in the public. Again, doing that targeted enforcement with people that she's been known to associate with, which ultimately led to some of those arrests. And so the tips do pay off. Yes, as we get more and more, that we have to devote those resources. But we had one last week, and we devoted all our resource to it, and it did not pan out. But we're able to now say, hey, that wasn't her. We were able to strike that one off the list and then move on to the next one. So I can't commend our investigators and again, the agency, everybody from law enforcement and intelligence and communications that's working on this together collectively to bring her back, to find her and bring her back here to Walton County.
Well, Chief Deputy Dustin Coulthart with the Walton County Sheriff's Office, thank you for your time. I know it's a very busy time for your agency, and best of luck with this search. Hopefully there's an arrest soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law&Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify, and we are also streaming on Peacock. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.